Hi, thank you everybody for joining us this afternoon for this Pre-Application Support Fund webinar. We'll be talking to you today about our award, the Pre-Application Support Fund, telling you a bit of background information and a bit more about how to apply. So today we are hoping to hear from a few people. So we've got with us Professor Annie Topping, who is the chair of the Pre-Application Support Fund Committee. We're also hoping to be joined later on by Sheraz Markar, who's the deputy chair of the committee. I'm Karen Fernando. I'm the Assistant Director of the Infrastructure and Capacity Building Structures team at the NIHR Academy. And I'm joined today by my colleagues, Chris Doble, who's the Senior Programme Manager for this award, and Tanya Probrat, who's the Programme Manager for this award. Thank you all. So we'll all be speaking to you today, and we'll all come back on screen for the Q&A at the end of our slides. So next slide, please. What are we going to tell you about today? We're going to give you a bit of background and introduction to the Pre-Application Support Fund. We're going to give you an overview of what's happened in the first two completed rounds of the Pre-Application Support Fund. We're also going to be giving some advice on submitting an application and top tips from the committee, and then we'll allow you time to ask us lots of questions as well. Next slide, please. So to give you some background on the NIHR, this short diagram shows the mission of the NIHR and what we try to focus on. So if you look at the top right here, you can see that we aim to attract, train and support the best researchers to tackle the complex health and care challenges of the future. And that's really what we do at the NIHR Academy. We're all passionate about people and developing people's careers. And that's where this award has come from. Next slide, please, Gareth. So we do a few things at the Academy. So if you keep clicking and more will appear. That's it, brilliant, thank you. So we take a role in developing and coordinating NIHR academic training in career development and research capacity development. We also manage national competitions for training and career development awards, of which this is one. As we've said, we also are aiming to attract and train and support the people who are conducting leading edge research focused on the needs of patients and the public. And we are aiming overall to develop the skills of the next generation of health and care researchers to be able to tackle the future problems and challenges that we might face. The next slide, please. If you could just go back one. That's it, brilliant. So we do have quite a large number of awards available for people to apply to. And this is actually just one page of 2 pages of available awards that we have now. There are some changes coming to these awards, and we'll give you a quick heads up of that on the next slide. But this gives you a kind of a quick overview of all the opportunities that we have available. At the moment, they're organised as per where your intentions lie for your award, whether you want to develop yourself academically and clinically or in practice, or whether you want to develop yourself purely academically. If you could go to the next slide. There are some simplification, there are some plans to simplify our awards to make this a bit easier to understand. Our portfolio of research and training career development opportunities has grown, and we really want to make sure that all of these opportunities are accessible and easily understood by all applicants. So next year we'll be simplifying our awards, some of those that you've just seen, to have a single pre-doctoral, doctoral and postdoctoral award. So nothing's being lost, and we will continue to keep the focus on areas that we've really worked hard to promote. But we will have committees under each of those pre-doc, postdoc and doctoral awards that are similar to our current committees, and review applications based on background, setting and area of research interest. So more information will be shared on this in the coming months. This is very just a notice that this is coming up for people. But we want to continue to apply and promote current awards that are open until we come out with more information. So that's just a quick heads up, and not the focus of our presentation today. So if you could go on to the next slide, please. The focus of our presentation today is the Pre-Application Support Fund, and Tanya's going to start with a quick overview of the scheme before we delve into more detail.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Karen. So as Karen just mentioned, we just want to give you an introduction to the Pre-Application Support Fund scheme, which is a funding opportunity that provides targeted support to individuals to prepare an application for one of our NIHR career development schemes. Next slide, please, Gareth. So for a little background of the scheme, the Pre-Application Support Fund Award was developed as part of an expansion of the NIHR Academy's provision for training and career development opportunities for those in health and social care professions. So you will probably be aware, but across the NIHR Academy, there are a broad range of opportunities for career development within those professions, but the Pre-Application Support Fund provides extra and targeted support to those that need it to produce a larger application for an NIHR career development scheme. Next slide, please. So the Pre-Application Support Fund is open to anyone who is planning to apply to one of the NIHR career development schemes. And as you can see on the slide, that means that it's open to applicants from all career stages and all professional backgrounds. And you can find a list of the eligible schemes in the latest round of the guidance notes, and we will be going through those in this webinar as well. And as mentioned, the Pre-Application Support Fund provides extra support to those who need it. So that's to submit a competitive NIHR career development scheme application and to enhance your chances of being successful. So those that apply for the Pre-Application Support Fund will need to clearly justify why they need the support from the scheme and how they'll use the award to prepare for their future application. Next slide, please. So while the scheme is open to all, the NIHR Academy are aiming to make a positive impact with the award to those within groups and professions that have been identified as underrepresented within the NIHR. This is based on the Best Research for Best Health document, as well as our diversity report, which was published last year. So you see on the slide, these are the underrepresented groups and professions that we particularly encourage applications from. So regulated healthcare professionals, inclusive of those listed on the slide, social work and public health professionals, researchers in methodology, applicants from ethnic and minority backgrounds, and applicants with a disability. Next slide, please. So to be eligible for the Pre-Application Support Fund, you need to meet the eligibility criteria, which we have listed here. So you'll need to clearly outline what additional support you need in order to prepare your future NIHR career development application. You'll need to hold a contract of employment with an eligible English host organisation, which could be a HEI, an NHS body, or a provider of health and/or care services. And within the application form, there is a section where you outline your proposed project for your NIHR career development scheme. You must ensure that your proposed research lies within the NIHR remit, which can be found on the NIHR website. And at the time of applying to the future NIHR career development scheme, you must meet the eligibility criteria for that award or expect to meet it at the time of application. And you are only able to hold one of our NIHR Career Development Awards at a time. And also, if you have previously held one of our NIHR Career Development Awards, you'll need to clearly justify why you require further support from the Pre-Application Support Fund. And there is a section within the application form where you can record this. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, on this slide is a list of the eligible NIHR career development schemes that you can use the support of the Pre-Application Support Fund to apply for. As Karen mentioned earlier, this might look slightly different at the time of you applying to those awards, as it will be in a simplified format, applying to the specific career stage. But just to reiterate, none of these opportunities on this slide are being lost. It's just going to be much simpler for you to apply for them. So if you are planning to apply for the Pre-Application Support Fund in this award, you will just still be selecting the individual award that you wish to apply for. Next slide, please. So in terms of funding from the Pre-Application Support Fund, the scheme aims to provide targeted and flexible funding to meet your needs as the applicant. So providing the time and space and support that you need to prepare an application will hopefully then enhance your future application for NIHR career development funding. And the main key difference between this award and other training and development awards is that costs should be specific to your planned application for NIHR career development funding. This will enable you to enhance your application further. Next slide, please. So the Pre-Application Support Fund will provide costs to support your salary. Within the application, you'll need to request the whole time equivalent that you wish to undertake the award, and you'll also need to clearly justify why you've chosen that WTE and how it aligns with the activities that you'll be undertaking during the Pre-Application Support Fund. And we do have different budget headings within the overall detailed budget for this award. And all of these are inclusive of travel and subsistence costs, such as accommodation or sustenance. There is a maximum of £1,000 for any conference-related costs, £5,000 for training and development costs, and then £3,000 for supervision, mentorship, and/or PPIE costs. If you need any more information on this, or you want to know how to record this in the detailed budget section of the application form, that can all be found within the applicant guidance notes on the website. Next slide, please. And within the Pre-Application Support Fund, we also have an other cost section within the budget. So this is to provide additional support that extends beyond the previously mentioned categories on the last slide. These will be really specific and individual to your needs as the applicant. We have seen a very broad range of requests within this budget heading in the last 3 rounds, but we shared just a couple of examples here for you, such as additional support for applicants with a disability who would like to attend training, courses or events that are related to their planned application. We've also had a request for assistive software packages for applicants who are neurodivergent, and also costs relating to care and responsibilities that are beyond the usual care costs that would be associated with their working patterns for undertaking activities during the awards, such as attending a conference. Next slide, please. And for the Pre-Application Support Fund, we do have 3 rounds per year, and these launch in January, May and September. And we're hoping with these regular round openings that we provide as much opportunity as possible for you to apply, and also for you to apply at a time that suits you. The applicant guidance notes for each round will detail when you can start the awards, which will always be on the 1st of the month. And we do currently have a round open, which is round 4 of the scheme. This closes at 1 p.m. on the 28th of November, and awards for this round can be started from April to July next year. Next slide, please. That was just really a whistle-stop tour of an overview of the Pre-Application Support Fund. So I'm going to hand over to Chris now, and he is going to share a summary of the first 3 rounds of the scheme with you. Thanks very much.
Great, thanks, Tanya. Yes, next slide, please, Kath. Great, thank you. So yeah, I think as has been highlighted, the Pre-Application Support Fund is open to anyone preparing an application for one of our career development schemes. So we do encourage application from specific professions and groups. So this pie chart provides an overview of the professional backgrounds of applicants to rounds 1 to 3 of the scheme so far. So I think this shows that we've seen applicants from a really broad range of professions that commonly apply to NHR, though with particularly good representation from nurses, midwives and allied health professionals, as well as other health or care practitioners that we do encourage to apply. Other health or care practitioners may include pharmacists or healthcare scientists or non-medical public health professionals, for example. Those that are not a health or care practitioner may include research scientists, health service researchers, see applications from statisticians or wider methodologists. So just to give you an idea of the breadth of people that have applied to the first 3 rounds of the scheme. Next slide, please. So this slide here has focused on the career stage of applicants that have applied to rounds 1 to 3. So this is the career stage of the scheme that they intend to apply to, rather than their current position. So we've received applications from all career stages supported by our scheme, from pre-doctoral right through to chair, though with a higher number of applicants planning applications towards postdoctoral or doctoral funding opportunities. At chair level, the lower number is likely just due to the low number of funding opportunities available, really. And we expect that the lower predoctoral number is likely because other funding opportunities at this career stage already include some support for preparing an application. So due to this, if you are planning to use the pre-application support fund to prepare an application to one of our predoctoral schemes, it's really important to explain why you're not applying directly to one of these schemes and why you need this additional support provided through the fund. Similarly, if preparing an application to one of our doctoral schemes, it's also worth explaining why the pre-application support fund is better suited to you and your needs compared to one of our other pre-doctoral offers. And just for some more information for rounds 1 and 2, for which we've already provided outcomes to applicants, the career stage breakdown of awards is similar to the applications received. And next slide, please. So yes, now I'm just going to provide a quick overview of what to include within your application, as well as the assessment process after you submit. Next slide. So this slide just provides an overview of the what happens to your application after you submit. So first, it undergoes eligibility checks. So the office undertakes a check for eligibility, as well as the compatibility of your planned application within our remit for personal awards. Then your application is passed through to the selection committee assessment stage. So at this stage, your application is assessed by 3 separate committee members. So this is a written assessment because interviews aren't undertaken for this scheme. Following a written assessment, the committee then will meet at a funding recommendation meeting to discuss the applications received and based on the assessments, make recommendations for funding that are then taken to the Department of Health and Social Care. And once the necessary approvals are complete, we then communicate outcomes to applicants via email. Next slide, please. So here we have the assessment criteria that selection committee members use to assess the applications. And I think when preparing an application, it's really important to have these criteria in mind, because this is what they're using when considering and scoring the application. And they'll provide a score on each of these 3 categories here. So they'll think about the person. So have you provided a clear explanation as to why you require additional support and why now is the right time? They'll be thinking about your suitability for the scheme that you intend to apply to. When considering your project proposal, it should be clearly articulated, provide a clearly articulated plan for how your award will be used to enhance your future application. They'll be thinking about the likelihood that the requested support will enable you to submit a competitive application, that this is feasible. Also be thinking about how the pre-application support fund will then also support your wider career development within research. And then considering your sites and supervision, they'll be thinking about the appropriateness of your proposed research support and any supervision or mentorship in place, as well as the provision of a strong research environment. And next slide. So in the section here on blue are just the list of the subheadings of the application form. An application is submitted in our grant system in Aramis, and I do recommend, if you are preparing an application, to always just go in, open it up and just see as early as possible what the form looks like. The application form is quite considerably short in length compared to our larger fellowship funding opportunities. And we do provide within our guidance notes detailed further information on each section of the application form. So it's always worth having both up at the same time and seeing what information is provided for each question as you're completing it. Next slide, please. So when completing the CV and research background sections, this really is an opportunity to outline your career to date. Make clear your time available to research during this time, outline any relevant skills and experience you've gained to date, and your commitment to a career in research. Make sure to include all research outputs you have, including those that are in development. It's always a good idea to emphasise any of your key research outputs or involvements to date. There's also a good opportunity to outline any contextual factors that you would like to make the selection committee aware of. Just making sure that within that section to only include details of any contextual factors that you may or may not have. Any further information about your application form which won't be considered within your application that is included within that specific section. Next slide, please. Within the training, development and research support section, there are two important questions for outlining your planned application to an NIHR career development scheme, as well as how you will use the fund to provide the additional support you need to prepare this. So in question 1, you should be looking to provide an overview of your planned application, including the area of research you'll be working in. Ensure that this area of research is within our remit, and use a clear and succinct writing style so that anyone, including people outside of your research area, can grasp this. You should be thinking about providing details of your training and development plan within your future application, because that's a key section for all our career development awards, and how this will support your future career development, as well as how patient and public involvement will be incorporated within your application. Within the second question, this is an important place to outline why additional support is required to prepare this application, and how the support provided by the pre-application support fund will enable you to submit a competitive application, why now is the right time, and why you've chosen the pre-application support fund over other opportunities, funding opportunities available through NIHR. Next slide. In the relevant sections, when considering your research support, these are important points to cover. So who will be involved? Try to include as wide a breadth of research support as possible, but don't just include names. Think about and highlight what expertise and experience your research support will be bringing to your project. And what will they be doing? Make sure it's really clear how they'll be supporting you during the project, and how much time they'll have available to you, and how frequently will you meet, for example. And then, how will this be further developed during your award? Are there any future collaborations you'll be looking to develop? Or will you be further developing ongoing collaborative relationships that will in turn benefit your future application? Next slide, please. And then finally, we have the detailed sort of budget costing section, as well as an opportunity to provide further uploads. So make sure you ask for the time you need, considering all aspects of your application. This does need to be well justified and linked to preparing your planned application. For any other extra costs that you're requesting in your application, make sure that you provide necessary details to support these. So for example, if you are requesting costs for a training course, provide details of the training course that you're intending to apply to, because this helps provide a really clear picture of what you'll be doing during the award. In the upload section, you can provide letters of support, but make sure that they are tailored to your application. We do recommend including a Gantt chart in PDF format particularly, as an opportunity to outline the key activities and deliverables that will be undertaken during your award. Next slide. So I'll now just hand over to Professor Annie Topping, who's the chair of the selection committee, who will be providing some further guidance on this, as well as top tips for preparing your application.
Thanks, Chris, and everyone for a great overview. I don't know if Shiraz has been able to join us, but if not, I'll carry on alone. I think we've learned a lot over the 3 application processes we've gone through as a committee, and I want to share some of our thinking that has come over that time. Next slide, please. And I'm going to start with the Gantt chart. Chris mentioned how important this is, and this is only example. It isn't the best way of doing it. The best way will no doubt be in application round 4 or 5. But what we really need to think about is a number of things in your Gantt chart. You will be applying in a pre-application support fund for a period of time, and that may be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week over that period of time. You also will, in your Gantt chart, need to think about when you will be submitting the application that you hope to apply for. So we would want to see in your Gantt chart, because your reviewers will look at it, and they are very good at looking at Gantt charts, probably because they've all had students or been putting themselves in for their own grants, etc. And they'll be counting up. If you're asking for 1 day a week and you're only going to meet your supervisor once during the period of what you've asked for, they're going to really wonder how you can achieve what it is you're going to achieve. So in your Gantt chart, it really needs to mirror what you've said in your application in terms of the content. So if you're going to ask for 5 days a week, a full whole-time equivalent for a whole year, perhaps, to apply, then you've got to justify what you're going to get in that Gantt chart and how you're going to manage it. Now, we have supported applications where, in fact, the training award they're applying for is submitted and they still have other things to do. So they may have a course that happens after the event. Now, we might still support that, even though this award is about making you competitive or more competitive for the training award you're applying for. But the reason they may justify is because this course only runs once a year and it's going to happen then in their Gantt chart. It won't happen when they're applying, when they're submitting their application. And that would be clearly stated in their subsequent application as well. So what I'm saying is every step in your application and on the Gantt chart needs to mirror each other, so we can they act as verification for each other. And they will be looked at thoroughly, but I wouldn't say forensically, by the reviewers in order to see that they tally. And the reviewers then view your application as good value for money, but also will help you achieve what it is you want to achieve. And one of the things we often worry about is when people only ask for 1 day, perhaps, or even half a day in order to get an application in 3 months without a really good, and we're really worried about will they achieve what it is they want to achieve. Next slide, please. So Gantt chart's really important. Chris and Tanya have mentioned person, place and project, and that's one of the key areas that all NIHR applications really concentrate on. And in terms of the person, what we want to see is that you achieve already, because in effect, we want to fund people who succeed. However, there is the section, and we're about contextual factors, which may have prevented you from achieving. But so it's really clear what research outputs you have had to date. Now, people are at different points in their career. We've got people really, really early career. And what they may have produced is, an audit inside their institution, or they may have gone to a professional conference, or they may have presented a poster at something. But it's still an output, and it shows that you have got potential if you're very early in your career. But if, say, you are applying for an advanced fellowship postdoctorally, we would want to see that your doctorate did translate into outputs of whatever sort that was, whether it's outputs in publications or whether it's outputs in conference, as well as conference outputs, attendances, and we would want to see that you are consistently able to do that. Now, there may be reasons why you aren't, and again, that would be something that you might want to put in your contextual factors. And we have had a number of people with learning difficulties that were particularly challenged, or we are still seeing people that COVID had an impact on productivity, and potentially productivity during, say, a doctoral period. But this pre-application support fund might be what they're asking for to enable to turn that round to show that they can really produce a competitive application in the future. So it's about making clear what your outputs are, and if they're part of this pre-application, how you're going to demonstrate the success for your next application. The clear outline of the need for the additional support is it really needs to be linked. And so I think for us, a strong application is where someone links what has happened in the past to what this will do, to give them added value to the next stage. And that narrative, that golden thread, needs to be through your application and also in the Gantt chart, illuminated in the Gantt chart. So it's that clear demonstration of how one connects to the other. And that is also linked with why this is the right time to apply. Now, one of the things that if in your contextual factors you say the reason why you weren't able to do everything you wanted to do previously, but now is the opportunity to say what you have put in place through those contextual factors that may have affected you in the past, now to achieve so that you will be able to put in a competitive application. So it's all about demonstrating almost the planning you are putting in place through this award to make you even better than you already are. So the right time is something that has to be very clearly spelled out. And also, if you're changing career direction, and we have had a number of applications, and they may have done, say, their PhD in one area, and they have developed expertise, say, in a methodology, but they now want to change that in an advanced fellowship to a focus in their future career that might be in something else. For example, their PhD may have been on smoking cessation, but now they want to look at addiction. Now, what you might want to, a different form of addiction. And therefore, what we want to see is that, for example, that they aren't necessarily sticking with the same supervision, that they are adding to their team or adapting their team to make sure that the new focus is going to be supported, and they will be enabled through this pre-application to put in a competitive application in this new topic area. So that needs to be really clear so that the people are there to support you. Because, at the end of the day, research is a team sport, even though these are individual awards. And it is often the team around you that will really help you succeed. And we want to see that you've understood what that team can contribute. And that links to a point that I think Chris and Tanya both made, which is we want to know what they're doing for you. It's not enough to name drop. We know there are stars out there who are great, but often stars in the research firmament are very, very busy. So we want to see their commitment to you in your application. Next slide, please. So that's person. In terms of project, it's not a project application, but we need to know enough about your project to make judgment that what you've asked for will enable you to achieve what it is you want to achieve in this, and also that your future project seems to be robust, has legs, is suitably focused. Now, remember, your reviewers are not expert in your field, but they have been round the block. So they are, and because they're good reviewers, they often will whiz into the literature that perhaps you've supplied or about your subject area. So remember that they are canny, but not necessarily experts in your field. So if you're going to be, say, putting a project about something into your advanced fellowship or your doctoral award, we want to have a sense what that is, and that it is robust enough for the award that you're going to be putting in for. But this is not an award for doing research project. Now, you might have some data that needs to be, say, reanalyzed to produce a publication, and that would be fine. But we're not here to bridge, say, a small grant that you were unable to finish to then, in effect, pay a research grant team. We're not here for that. We're here for you to develop the skills and the substance in your application for the future award. It is, you really need to think about the time you're asking for. And that is both, we often worry when people ask for too much time and there isn't much of substance in the application. And also we worry if people are not asking for enough time, and will they achieve what it is they want to achieve. So really think about your productivity and what you can achieve and what is reasonable to achieve, because we're all researchers looking at them, and what we know is research takes 3 times everything that you estimate it will take. So really think that through, but don't over ask and don't under ask. And we really want to know about the public and patient involvement in any application. And so going back to the whole point about your project, it's really good to summarise what the project is, but this is not a grant application around a project. Next slide. Place and support. This goes back to who you are going to name as your support people. And we really want to know what they're bringing to it, how frequently they're going to meet, and if you need to cost their time in, that it is suitably costed. We also would like to know any support provided by your hosting organisation, or any activities that are provided by your host activities that could be, and in their statements, we really want them to tailor it to you. One of the issues that reviewers often raise about host statements is they often seem to be written in a rather formulaic way, that this university always does this. Whereas what we want to see is that this university or this organisation does this for you, and they are surrounding you with the infrastructure to make you a future in that organisation or a future leader in research, because people may move on. But we really want to see it tailored to you, how they have done that. Yes, we want them to tell us that they're wonderful and amazing and all the rest, but it is what they're going to give to you. And their costs are quite important, because if you're saying they're going to meet you every day for 6 months, and you haven't, and the cost of their time is way over what is allowable, we do wonder whether they're really going to be able to do it as well. Next slide, please. So I think now we're going to move to the Q&A, and I think we'll all be coming back to answer the questions that you may have raised. Hope you found that helpful.
Brilliant. Thank you, Annie. That was really helpful. So we've got plenty of questions, so I'm going to get straight underway. And I'm looking at those that are most upvoted first, so that you can help orient yourself. So first question, with other pre-application support such as the PCAF, how do we know the best one to apply for? It's a great question, isn't it? Now, one of the simplest ways to answer this is to say, if you read the guidance notes for the award that you want to apply for and you think you can already go for it, then go for it. You do not need a pre-application support fund. If you need that extra boost to get to where you need to be, then this might be the avenue for you. But Annie, Chris, do you want to offer anything else?
Yeah, well, I would agree. I mean, we have actually said to people, we don't think you ought to have a pre-application support fund. We think you need to apply straight to PCAF. You're a great candidate, go for it. Yes, I mean, I think it is really in the justification. And that is the important thing. And I think there is some confusion about PCAF Bridge versus full PCAF. And so what's really important is, if you are confused as an applicant around that space, get in touch with the team. They will guide you. They are wonderful at guiding you about that. And as well, your local research design service, they are still that, no, research support service, RSS. And also other people in your organisations, both at your university and elsewhere. But it is difficult, and often it's an issue to do with the amount of training you might want to put in a PCAF, and particularly the PCAF Bridge has some limitations, and that may be the area where you think a pre-application support fund might be better. But what we do not want to encourage is people going from award to us to another award. We would like you to have got through your first award what you need to move on to the next award, not endlessly have a pre-application support fund, because this is for the extra bit that will really make you competitive.
And just to very quickly add as well, because I guess if you were thinking about should I go towards the pre-application support fund or one of our pre-doctoral opportunities before then looking for a doctoral application. We just look at the schemes in terms of their aims, the funding that's available. The pre-application support fund compared to PCAF maybe provides a bit more flexibility in terms of funding available, but its aims are much less broad than PCAF. They're really targeted towards preparing applications. So if you're thinking you need some broader training, development, or master's funding opportunity, then PCAF might be a better opportunity for you. So it's really look towards the aims and funding available and funding straits for the scheme. It would be my advice.
Brilliant, thank you both. Okay, so next question that's got 6 votes has just disappeared off my screen. Sorry, I'm going to scroll back up. So, can academics, HEI-based, with considerable teaching responsibilities apply for pre-application support fund for their career development? Short answer is yes, but you need to be making a good case. Annie, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you really will have to justify that you are. I mean, some universities have teaching only contracts. Other universities have joint contracts, but in fact, you're given no time to do research. So it needs to be really, really clear why, what, wherefore. But we are well aware, and I think for a lot of our schemes, how you're going to develop either as a methodologist through that, or you are going to develop as a clinician in your future award. Because if you're largely teaching only, it is probably clinical practice or the clinical focus that you need to develop. So really think through, but it has to be argued. Brilliant.
A really good one here. Can we explain what makes a good application as per the criteria? So that's a good one, isn't it? I think Annie's given you some of those top tips at the end of the presentation there, but what is a good argument for needing the funding to support the application? Surely for everyone it's that it takes time that is not funded by other means. So the case for support is incredibly important, isn't it? So what makes a good application? I think you really nailed it in the presentation, Annie, when you said about why now, why this support, where's this going to get you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like any good writing. There's got to be the message you want to communicate, and it has to be a golden thread through all the parts. So, and it's that consistency. So it's there in, it's almost like not a checklist, but, in your Gantt chart and the narrative that you are building the blocks of why we should give you, well, not us give you the money out of our pockets, but why we should support your application. And that golden thread has to be built. So it's like any argument or any message you want to communicate, but it is truly individual. So for some people, it's not just time. For some people, it's actually paying for the childcare so they can do what they're good at in the time they have available. So it really is individual, but it's what you build. Or it really is the 2 courses that you weren't able to put into your DCAF award or the PCAF award that really are going to, transform you, doing a health economics module that will make you think very differently about your subject area. And so it might be the training that's equally important, but it's the justification that is all important, that golden thread through it all and in your Gantt chart.
And just to add, time is a central part. So protected time is a central part of all applications really we receive, but there are opportunities there to really tailor through PPI involvement, training opportunities, these things too, and other costs if needed.
Brilliant. So next up voted question is, what is the ballpark WTE that successful applicants are requesting? So we get a big range in terms of whole time equivalent and indeed award duration that people are requesting. So it has to be doable within that time, what you're proposing, and it has to be well justified. But Annie, Chris, do you want to add anything?
Well, we have had everything from sort of half a day a week for 3 months to full-time equivalent for a year. So it is the justification, pure and simple, and adjudged by experienced people whether what you're claiming you're going to achieve is doable. And you may be the most efficient completer finisher, but give yourself time to craft the work that you want to do. But equally, do not over ask, because we are experienced and we might all say, really, do you need a year to do that? I think you could do that in 6 months, and so but that's our judgment call based on not a good justification. If you can justify a whole time equivalent for 12 months, absolutely, we will support it. We really, we want success from this award. That's what we're interested in, and helping people to succeed.
Yeah. And one of the unique things of the scheme compared to other funding opportunities is the flexibility in what you can request. So is that opportunity to personalise, and we're not restrictive in any way on WTE. So if you require 1 day a week, 2 days a week for a length of time, I think in the guidance we do give one example, but that is really to try and demonstrate the flexibility available rather than suggest what you may require, because again, it will vary depending on your circumstances, but also the level of scheme that you're applying to, whether it be a pre-doctoral, doctoral, or postdoctoral.
Brilliant. Okay, so a popular question is, will the applicant need to have a contract already in place for the entire duration of the award? It's difficult to see how this will go towards salary if someone is funded already, but if employment must be in place for eligibility, how does this work? So, Tanya, Chris, do you want to tackle this one?
Yeah, I'm happy to, Chris. So at the time of application, you don't need to have the contract in place, but it must be in place from the first day of you starting your award, and it must be obviously in for the whole duration of the award. And in terms of the salary supports, obviously you're being paid via your employer. Our salary support gets paid via DHSC, Department of Health and Social Care, to your employer, and they will obviously claim back that money that they've paid for your salary. So I think that might have just been a bit confusing. You won't be double funded, it's just to repay your employer for the contract, if that makes sense.
Brilliant, thanks, Tanya. Chris, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, only third thing is just to emphasise that your host organisation doesn't have to be your employer. You can have a separate host organisation and then your employer as a partner organisation in the application form, and some really good guidance on considerations to make, so when selecting a host organisation.
The next question is actually the same one. You need evidence of a contract of employment, and essentially the host organisation that's signing off your form is signing to say that they will take you on for that time if they're signing the form for you. So we've covered that one. Okay, so if you have research funding but not time funded for a pilot study that would go towards a PhD, can you include this as what you need the time for the pre-application support fund for? So you've got research funding, but not time for a pilot study that would go towards a PhD. Can you include this as what you need the time for the pre-application support for?
I suppose we would probably ask, what is the research funding? Yeah, which is why the summary and a good explanation would be there, because this award is not to fund other people's research. However, we can see that there may be a case for some preliminary data collection, which, if it is all set up, that would really feed well into particularly a doctoral award. And a pre-application support fund, a advanced fellowship. So I think it goes back to the justification, and we would probably want a little bit on the terms of the original award, because we will not double fund anything, or for the fact that things couldn't have been done because it was overambitious in the first place. That's not our job. We're not here to fund research. We're here to fund people to get to a place where they will get a future training award. So I think that's one where you'd have to be really clear about what you are asking for and why it wasn't achieved previously, and what the grant was agreed to cover.
Yeah, good. Okay, so the next one, I'm an early career researcher. I don't have any publications. Should I still apply? Well, if the time is going to help you into a place where you're going to be ready to make an award, if you can make that case, this may be an award for you, but it depends where those publications are coming from. Annie, Chris, anything?
Yes, I mean, people apply for PCAF and don't have publications, but they may have other evidence which suggests that they have capabilities. So, for example, they may have been involved in an audit, and which was produced internally, and may have a report gone to trust board or divisional leads or whatever. They may have gone to a conference and presented as a joint author in a poster. There may even be something from their undergraduate past. I do know someone who very successfully put in a PCAF application who had written a children's book. And you would think, what does that show? Well, it shows they can write. And, so it's a skill set. So I think you need to think about, if I'm very, very early, have I got a skills in other places? I have written 10 reports for management but I've not done a publication. But if you've been involved in research and not got publications, we would be slightly concerned, unless, for example, your role has been in delivery and for some reason you were not an author on the studies. And that might be an area where you aren't. And you might say, but I have written protocols, or I have written other things, scope, procedural documents, etc., etc. And that would be an example if you're really, really early. But I think one of the things we would expect is, postdoctorally and advanced fellowships, we do look not at volume, but, overall that there is consistency in publication. Because in fact, in the UK, unlike some countries, we're more interested in quality publications than volume, but we do want to see a journey to publication and outputs.
And there's always a contextual factor if you haven't got that to explain why not. So there's a question here to say there's been a recent awards to ARCS for pre-application support fund. How does this align with the application process discussed here? So you're absolutely right. ARCS BRCs, health protection research units and patient safety centres, some of which have been awarded some money for pre-application support. And each one of those centres will be focusing on something that's very close to them locally for their ARC, for their BRC. So they might have a specific scheme, for example, for nurses or for a certain career stage, for example, whereas this pre-application support is a broader brush. It's open to more probably individuals than whatever the local ARC or BRC might be directing funds to. Also, there's a kind of wide application range in terms of how much money you can ask for with this scheme, which might not be available through local ARC BRC type schemes. So next question, I'm not entirely clear on what you mean by additional support. For example, is it just buying out time to work on the proposal sufficient, or is this scheme particularly aimed at people with additional needs, e.g. disability or carers, etc.? So it's a bit of both, isn't it, really?
It is, absolutely, yeah. So we do specifically encourage applications from individuals with disability, but I mean, we see a really wide breadth of applications to this scheme, everyone with their individual cases and needs for support. Beyond obviously time, I think we just in the other application, but there are other opportunities to request further. So it's mentorship or PPI input into an application, which can really strengthen the application, targeted training and development in areas that you need to develop further towards submitting applications. There's funding available to help to almost personalize your application and really try and get the support you need to develop yourself towards submitting the future application.
I mean, the thing is that if you're a candidate that just needs, but what needs this space that this award might offer you, and you don't have circumstances that prevented you from achieving in the past, that doesn't matter. It's just if you did, we want to hear from it because it will help us in our judgment to make it to make sure that you are successful. So it's you don't have to have a disability or whatever, but we want to support people as well who do.
Next question. If an application is judged to be good, but the applicant has asked for too much time, would an award ever be offered at a lower time level rather than just straight up rejected? I think there is a tendency to request lower time to seem more appealing.
So we have had a couple of circumstances where the committee has felt there's a really strong application, but the time requested might need to be adjusted in terms of feasibility in either direction effectively. So on that, when an application is deemed to be fundable, and when the funding, then there's just that one criteria, then we may follow up with what we call a condition of award, which might be a particular, and there are other circumstances where this may be required, where a bit of further information is required. For example, we may award with, as long as subject to a particular condition from the committee being met. So there are those cases.
Brilliant. And so we haven't got much time left, so I'm going to try and get us to go through a couple. Is it possible to apply if you're not 100% sure of which scheme you want to apply for? Would it be looked on disfavourably if you're going to use the time to work out whether it should be an ACAF or a SCUPA or any of the other awards?
Fully recommend. If you're actually not clear, it's worth having those. Sorry, Tanya, just worth having those discussions with supervisor, mentor about things, and trying to develop your ideas a bit further before submitting an application.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I would say this is an area where you need local advice, about you. By local, I mean your team around you, because they could be all over the country or even internationally these days. But it's having that where are you going and where are you conversation. And it's where mentorship, which I would encourage all the way through your career as a researcher, is really important, because they can help advise you. But also going back to the academy, these wonderful people who can give you some advice about what the sort of nitty-gritty of the schemes, which often is what you need to understand.
I was just
question. Sorry,
I was just going to add to that. Just obviously, I was going to say what Annie said there. Do get in touch with us if you are unsure, and we can also get in touch with the managers that manage the other schemes. But just to make you aware, in the application form, you do need to select which scheme you wish to apply for going forward. So obviously, it will be a bit difficult to do that if you're not 100% sure, and a lot of the activities that you plan to undertake during the pre-application support fund award will be directly relevant to that specific scheme that you wish to apply for. So there may be something for, I can't remember what the examples were, but for the SCUPA, it may not be relevant if you're applying for an AF. So just to keep that in mind as well.
And I mean, the point I was going to add is about you can be applying for an award and applying for this, but you won't get both. So if we hear in the process, because they're all connected, so they know exactly what's going on for people who are applying to the NIHR, if you happen to get your advanced fellowship and you've applied for this, then you're not going to get this as well.
Right, okay. I think we're going to have to bring it to a close there. We have got lots of open questions, so we will try and write down some answers to those and send them around with the information post webinar. Thank you to all of our speakers today. That's been really helpful, and thank you to you all for spending your hour this afternoon with us, and we hope that you've got some of the information that you were looking for, and do get in contact with us if you have any further questions. Thank you.